Buongiorno. Good afternoon. My name is John Royal. I'm president of Gulf Energy Information. We are a media company with technical information for the global energy industry with offices in Houston, London, and Dubai. I'm very pleased to be here today to lead the discussion about nuclear. We'll begin with a panel that will discuss projects and the outlook for nuclear, particularly in Europe. And then that panel will be followed with a discussion of flow control and valves in the nuclear industry. So first, I'd like to introduce our panelists. And I'll ask each of them to come up after this introduction, then they'll each give a statement to all of you. First, Marco Ricotti is professor of nuclear power plants at Politecnico di Milano, member of the governing board of the EU SMR Industrial Alliance, and member of the governing board of the Italian Nuclear Association, AIN. AIN is the Italian Nuclear Society joining and representing all the national centers of competence for nuclear technology. So, Marco, please join me. Thank you. And Marcello Parodi, and excuse me if I didn't pronounce your name exactly right, I'm trying my best in Italian. Marcello Parodi is Director of Supply Chain Manufacturing and Cost Estimation for Ansaldo Energia. Ansaldo Energia is a full-service provider of proven flexible solutions for the global power industry. Marcello? Thank you. Next is Giuseppe Lanati, Head of Innovation Department, Confindustria Bergamo. Confindustria Bergamo is working to understand how the nuclear challenge can become a concrete industrial opportunity for the Bergamo area. This work has led to the development of a dedicated position paper on nuclear energy as a strategic opportunity for Bergamo. The next step is to move from analysis to action by building a focused nuclear supply chain initiative. So, Giuseppe. Giovanni Zimello, Master of Engineering, Managing Director of Alfa Laval SPA, with senior experience in the oil and gas industry and with a long-standing career in global supply chains. Mr. Zimello is representing ANIMA as a delegate for the Working Group Internationalization. ANIMA is part, that's ANIMA, is part of Confindustria, the largest federation of industrial companies in Italy. So, welcome. Elena Frangione. Where is Elena? Oh, she's in video. Elena. Let me introduce Elena, nuclear engineer, director of complex tenders for Nuvia Vinci Group. The company specializes in nuclear engineering, services, and products, both civil and defense. Elena is also in charge of Giffen International Italy Club and vice president of SPIN, the Association of Italian Professionals Working for French Nuclear. Elena, welcome. Now I'd like to give each of the panelists a few minutes to talk about this subject and their organization in greater detail, and we can begin with Elena.
Yes, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sorry. So apologies, I couldn't be with you for geographical reasons since I'm based in France. And so thank you for the invite. So a quick regression on myself and my current job. So as John has said, I'm a nuclear engineer And I had a chance to been working in the nuclear industry as a really passionate nuclear engineer for the past 16 years. And I grew up professionally and culturally in 3 nuclear countries. So I started my career in Italy working for Ansaldo. Then I moved to the UK working for Rolls-Royce Civil Nuclear. And then for the past 10 years, I have been working in France for Nuvia, where currently I manage the technical and commercial direction of the group in France. So Nuvia is an international company. They have many companies all spread all around the world, and this allows me to have, let's say, a nice overview on which are the major nuclear projects, more or less. In many countries. What we do, as John said, we are involved in many construction, so new build projects such as EPR2, ITER, Hinkley Point in the UK, and the Joule Horowitz reactor in France. But also I've been involved also recently, and since I started working in nuclear, in decommissioning and waste management projects in Italy, so for Sogin, for the JRC in Ispra, and for the CEA in France, and also in LTO projects such as Dungeness nuclear power plant extension project in the UK many years ago, and a little involvement in the SMR Archeos, which is still under development with all the other many SMRs projects. If I can give you just a summary of what's my point of view on the new build for both large nuclear plants and small or advanced modular reactors in Europe. For what concerns the large nuclear plants, we can obviously focus on 2 main technologies, which are under more or less construction in Europe. So Westinghouse with the AP1000 and EPR2, the French technology. And this is what's happening, let's say, in the short term. In the medium long term, instead, if we want to project ourselves on the small and advanced modular reactors, I would say that in Europe, we have to be confident that we can choose and develop a few designs in the next decade. And then if we want to look at the construction, I think that the Eastern and the Western part of the world are a little bit more advanced.
Very
John,
good.
it's for me.
All right, thank you. Marco. Marco is a professor of nuclear energy. Please give us your thoughts on this subject of the outlook for nuclear energy.
Okay, just a few words about AIN, the Italian Nuclear Association. The mission of the association is to share information between the members, but also to provide suggestions to the policymakers, or to present what are the opportunities, the needs, and the critical issues in a plan for Italy to restart the nuclear option. We are trying to partnering several other entities, like we signed an agreement with Anima a few months ago. We are going to sign a collaboration agreement with a similar association in Poland in next month. Poland is pushing a lot on the nuclear sector, both on large and small reactors. We signed an agreement last year with the GFEN, with the French Nuclear Industrial Association. So we are trying to set up a network with other stakeholders in order to collaborate on that very complex topic that is nuclear. You mentioned what's going on in Europe around that topic. There is a lot of movement Um, we can see that within the European SMR Industrial Alliance, but not only. I would say that there are several countries that are now reconsidering the nuclear option. In some cases, they change their mind, like Sweden, for example. They move from phase out to new build, now essentially with the large reactors, but having a look also to the small reactor. There are newcomer countries like Poland, pushing hardly in a very serious way on that. There are probably also other newcomer countries like Italy, because we are not starting from scratch in principle, but we have to perform a long path for having again this type of option. Belgium is thinking again to new build. The Netherlands, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Bulgaria, Romania, where Ansaldo is working a lot. I think that we will learn about that in a while. So I think that there is a positive mood around the potential improvement of energy security, competence, competitiveness, of Europe, and also environment for that type of energy supply.
Very good, thank you. Marcelo of Ansaldo Energia, what are your thoughts?
Yes, really Ansaldo Nucleare, which is a company of Ansaldo Energia. Okay, and I'm not a nuclear engineer. I'm a mechanical engineer. I worked many years in the conventional power plant in Ansaldo Energia, and so I can bring my experience in this last 5 years since I'm an Ansaldo Nucleare. What is the difference, okay, in business and the technological approach to the business? Ansaldo Nucleare is in the nuclear business since many years. It was there when we had 4 power plants in Italy, okay? And after the decision to leave the nuclear technology, Ansaldo Nucleare continued to keep the knowledge and to invest in the knowledge about the nuclear technology and nuclear business, and working mainly in Italy in the decommissioning of the power plant. We are still working, and in the construction and maintenance of power plant abroad, mainly in Europe, especially in Romania, that we consider our, let me say, domestic market, because we participated more than 30 years ago to the construction Cernavoda 1 unit, and now we are doing the refurbishment of this unit to the extension of life for the next 30 years. Then we participated to the Cernavoda 2, always together with Candu, which is the owner of the technology. And now we are participating in the consortium JV for the construction of 2 new nuclear power plant, Cernavoda 3 and 4. And so I think that in Romania there is a clear decision to go on with the nuclear energy, and there is a long path for the next years. But as Professor Ricotti told you, there is a lot of renaissance, okay, of the nuclear business in Europe, not only in Romania, but also in, I should say, most of the east part of Europe, where Poland, for instance, Slovakia, is Czech Republic, and we are working in this country, okay, together with partners like, for instance, Westinghouse or others, and we are, and also obviously also in France with the big project that they have for 6 new reactors with the EDF. Then Ansaldo Nucleare is also investing, is part of the European Alliance for SMR, okay, and we are investing money, but also time and people in the development of the SMR, collaborating with the major constructor. And we have a project for an advanced modular reactor together with Romanian and Belgian organization, SCNCAN and RATEN, and which is the Eagle project, that was approved by the European Alliance as one of the projects that has to be developed for the new technology. Okay, so I think this is as Ansaldo Nucleare, we obviously believe this is there will be a future because there are many reasons for the nuclear power plant to develop in the next year.
Ansaldo Nucleare.
Ansaldo Nucleare,
Thank you.
yes. But yes, in Ansaldo Energia, sometimes I do mistake myself because I was 30 years in Ansaldo Energia. So
Okay, very good. Thank you. Giuseppe.
Yes. Good afternoon also from my side. First of all, it's really interesting to see a lot of people in this room today because when we think as Confindustria Bergamo the opportunity to organize this session, it was in trouble if it could be recognized as an important event. At the end of the story, if we see the people that are participating in the meeting, for sure, since that is an argument that is interesting to understand, to go in deep, and so also to have a session like this one in this event. So really thank you very much also for all the attendance. You know, Confindustria is an organization that represents the manufacturing company in Italy. Is a national organization, but there are for each province in the country there is the specific Confindustria. I represent Confindustria Bergamo. And within the activity that we launch as a strategic pattern for the next 4 or 5 years, we identify a lot of new value chain, new for sure for our territory, that we think that is important to track and to understand and to identify if it's possible also to move some of our company in this new direction. And one of these directions for sure is nuclear one. As mentioned by Professor Ricotti, for sure Italy for a nuclear has a lot of things to do, so it's not easy to start from tomorrow, but anyhow, we start an interest program where we try to identify if our company that not working in nuclear environment till today have the condition to move in this new business, for sure considering all the aspects that is necessary to take in consideration, starting from the certification, starting from the capabilities and so, but anyhow to help our company here in Bergamo to understand really if they can move on this new direction. And for do it, we in our path, first of all, we try to analyze the sector itself, and so to understand if really there are potentiality for the company that are not sitting directly with this business. Then trying to identify if there are the opportunity where we can catch within the value chain our company, and then based on this one try to build a common, we call filiera, so a common value chain where for the different part of the value chain we can identify some company that can play the role, for sure not only in Italy but at Europe level. And so now we are working with our company in order to identify the possibility to build this value chain and then to be in the condition to react when for sure some major construction or in Italy or let me say around Europe ask for some capacity that we can catch. We start on this assumption also because for sure, as mentioned, there is a particular attention on nuclear environment and nuclear energy in the last month for the reason that all of us knows. And we try to identify if really we are the opportunity to catch this kind of new business for the company here also in Bergamo. So our role is to push our company to try to address this opportunity, for sure based on some analysis or some consideration. So highlighting the point that it's not an easy sector, and so we have to be prepared. We have to do something in order to be in the condition to catch this opportunity that we think is an opportunity.
Thank you. Giovanni, with Alfa Laval and representing Anima.
Yes, thank you, John. First of all, thanks everybody for being here. As said, I'm a managing director for a company belonging to the Alfa Laval group, but today I'm here representing, based in Bergamo, by the way, just to recall my colleague here. Okay, by the way, today I'm representing Anima Confindustria, which is an association grouping together 35 sub-clubs of different components, different activities within the mechanical industry in Europe. Anima represents, I would say, the most important association when it comes to the mechanical industry in Italy. And it has an important role to promote innovation, competitiveness, and interest versus the government nationwide. So it's not the local Confindustrie, but the global part. One of the association is AVR, which is the Association for the Valve and Tap Manufacturers, which is very important because it has been supporting this fair as well, so it's present in here. And when it comes to the focus on nuclear, this is part of an effort of the working group dedicated to the internationalization of the companies in Italy. So together the companies can be an important base for creating a Italian supply chain for supporting the nuclear development, the nuclear programs development, for sure across Europe and worldwide. Companies represented have the qualities and capabilities to perform globally, despite our many times smaller companies, small, mid-sized companies, but they have the capability to reach the world when it comes to providing components, important components. In here, specifically in this area, you can find valve manufacturers, a lot, of course, but not only pressure vessels, heat exchangers. All those components are very crucial for developing nuclear power plants. And this is what the association is supporting.
Thank you very much. As you can see, we have a very esteemed panel here for this subject of nuclear energy. And what we'll do is we'll go through a series of questions, and then if we have time at the end of the discussion, we'll take some questions from the audience. The first question I want to pose to this panel is on nuclear energy regaining strategic importance in Europe, especially with what's going on in the energy markets, but we also see growth in the United States and Canada. But I wanted to ask this panel, what trends are you seeing in Europe right now? And is there a sense of urgency because of the uncertainty of traditional oil and gas markets? Elena, would you like to begin? We haven't forgotten you. There you are. I think you're silenced. No?
Yeah, now?
Now you're okay.
Sorry, yeah. So yeah, really wide question. So I'll give a quick answer from my industrial point of view, since I'm involved in many tendering processes. What I see, there is a lot of movement across Europe, a lot of interest from many countries which were not in the, let's say, in the classic supply chain for nuclear projects. And I would say that what we would need to do, and what we would foster and promote, is a collaboration, not only supplier towards the client, but suppliers towards supplier.
Great.
Because, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, it's okay, it's okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Who else would like to take this question?
Maybe I can give an answer. What we see is a global revival. So nuclear is back, and there are three main drivers for it. I would say decarbonization, of course, is one. It has been taken as a way forward to improve the cleanness of our planet. There were several debates in Europe now. Direction is clear also because there is a focus on the energy security, which was less present a few years ago, but with the new US administration, the new shift in terms of geopolitical scenarios, this is becoming even more important. So there is a focus also from the political environment where the matter becomes more sensitive now. Additionally, of course, there is a very visible trend on demand for energy, for energy which is coming from the digitalization of the world. So the introduction, the creation of large data centers for the need of having AI in place. These are the three main trends which are visible. I can let other
Giuseppe?
comments.
Yes. We have to see the both sides on the chain, because now we stress the point of the supplier, so on the offering, on the capability to produce and to realize new important central for produce nuclear per se, but also as Confindustria we represent also the company that have a demand of energy. So what we highlight as a trend, for sure, it was mentioned by the previous speaker, but what we can highlight is this urgency also to do something. So every day the day go on, but without any kind of decision. At the end of the story, we put the company, but not only the company, the overall people, but the company in particular one, in the condition to not compete with the correct value of the energy, and so it's necessary really to do something. So the point is to push on the both sides, one to be in the condition to start the construction of the new nuclear center, but also on the other side to react in order to put in the condition the company to compete in a correct way using the correct price of the energy. And so we are ready to match the 2 points. But it's not easy from a certain point of view, but it's mandatory to do it.
Thank you.
But it's difficult to add something, okay, because the reason for this nuclear, for the interest in the nuclear business is coming from the demand, coming from the decarbonization, whatever. From the point of view of the supply chain, what I see is that there is already a pressure on the supply chain. I have, as Ansaldo Nucleare, we represent a point of entry in Italy for the nuclear business in Italy, okay? And we have a lot of requests from company to better know the Italian supply chain, okay? Because there are a lot of company in Italy, that are already working, and so there is a pressure on the supply chain and also on the skills that these supply chain and these business demands. Okay, it's very difficult at the moment to find young engineers, to find people with the competencies and the skill to work in the nuclear technology. And so this pressure is, I think, the best signal that there is a real interest in this technology. And as Ansaldo Nucleare, Professor Ricotti know that we are working to improve this number of people, that technician at all levels that can work in this business.
Thank you. Marco?
Yes, exactly. We designed together with Ansaldo last year a master dedicated to 26 professionals that were hired by Ansaldo, no nuclear engineers, all the other type of, yeah. But to nuclearize that people, yes, the human resources is a topic. But about the trends, I think that, as I said, the trend I see is positive in Europe and potentially also in Italy. I cross the fingers. But there are some but. The trend is positive because the European citizen, also the Italian citizen, and the stakeholders for sure, the political side is starting to learn about that. That nuclear is an option, is an interesting option to answer the trilemma that you mentioned. So decarbonization, energy security, and energy to reduce the dependence from other countries, and competitiveness. That is clear. But I think that we have 2 items to be addressed, to be solved. The first is from the political side, the policy side. If you look at the newspapers in the last 5 months, we have 3 big players of the political arena: Chancellor Merz, President Ursula von der Leyen, and Minister Reike, all 3 from Germany, that they both said, okay, we made a big mistake in reducing nuclear or not giving the right emphasis on that. In Italian, we would say is a mea culpa. Okay, but now what else? Where are the policies to give the right recognition of the role that nuclear may play, not only from the policy side, but also from the financial side, because this is a bottleneck. As we drove the financial opportunities to renewables with specific laws and regulation that is affecting how the banks are investing their money, we should include also nuclear in that area. The second is the industrial environment, especially the supply chain. We need to set up a European supply chain for nuclear, especially for the SMR, because we will not have an SMR market unless we have a portfolio of orders, because we have to move from the economy of scale to the economy of multiples, economy of series. And if we will be able, and this can only be addressed at a European level, not a single country can do that. If we will be able to operate in that direction, I think that we will have more opportunities to improve the nuclear sector all across Europe.
Very good. We'll come back to the supply chain issue. I know that's a big issue, but first, my perspective being an American is, you mentioned Merz and Germany having shut down all the nuclear and Merz having just
the
announced
nuclear power plants, yes.
We made a big mistake. So how, the different countries differ in their approach, but I'm very interested in what is the outlook for Italy specifically, and Bergamo, this region as well, for nuclear development?
Okay, if I...
Okay, there is a... perfetto. Yeah, there is a fight to answer, meaning there are opportunities.
Please.
There are opportunities.
Please.
I think there are, when it comes to the estimates, there is an estimated demand which is around 4 to 5 billion per year in the next 10 years in terms of nuclear components to be provided to the rising projects in Europe, mostly coming from revamps, specifically mostly in France, but not only France, UK, and then, as mentioned, in Central and Eastern Europe countries. So the demand is there. There is a gap. There is a gap in terms of capabilities, which can be, however, fulfilled because there are several companies in the mechanical sector with a very, very high and good quality level that can convert or shift to nuclear as well. Of course, it's not an immediate and easy step, but with the right approach, it can be done. This is what we see, at least. And then I can let the answer to others.
Please.
By the way, I forgot to say, Anima is also supporting this by organizing the matches between the industry. So there is an event which is planned in October, 12 and 13 October in Milano, where there will be the possibility to meet the French side, the French industrial organization, Business France, and in there will be possibility to touch and get details of the opportunities, how to really get into this market.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Giuseppe.
Thank you. You mentioned Bergamo, so thank you very much. For sure, Bergamo is an important industrial area in Italy and Lombardy, but for sure we are not the center of the world, in particular for the nuclear environment, where we don't have an historical capability. But as I said in the beginning, we are conscious that it's possible to do something, that are possible to understand if really we can move some of our company within this new supply chain. But for sure we have to be capable to catch the opportunity that arrive in the let me say in the European value supply chain, as mentioned by the professor. So we are conscious that we have to work in order to improve our capability locally, but we know that the real challenge is to be capable to catch the opportunity that can arrive to be part of an important European supply chain, or at least a national or European supply chain. So we are really working in order to support this kind of opportunity that could happen in the next years, and we have to work again in order to be capable to reach this opportunity, because if something particular was necessary, some industrial capability was necessary for sure to have also the people with the correct skill, and so there is a lot of work to do in order to catch this opportunity, but we are conscious that it's possible to do it, and let me say we must do it also as Bergamo area for sure.
Thank you.
Yes, if I can add something, I think that when you think to the nuclear market, you must think about at least the European market, not the Italian market or whatever, because as Ansaldo Nucleare, we survived in this market. Also, we don't have any nuclear power plant in Italy, so for us, the market is obviously the European market. And the market, the SMR, will be for sure an European market. Then I think it's very important to be prepared to this market. And one point is for sure the certification, okay? Because when I speak to many companies in Italy or abroad, the problem with their certification is the first one that comes up, okay? I had some numbers that I hope are not true, probably are not the last one, but for instance, the ISO 19443, which is the certification for the nuclear business, in Italy there are less than 20 companies which are certified, okay, which is 20 is nothing, okay, considering all the supply chain, all the potentiality of the supply chain in Italy. And if we think about the ASME 3 certification, we are less than 5, okay. And so when we spoke about heat exchanger, pressure vessel, valves, pumps, all these certification is very important. Then we have another problem in Italy, that in Europe, sorry, that we don't have the same certification all over Europe. Okay, we have different regulatory institute, we have different rules in every country. We have in Romania we have CENECAN, we have USHIR, but I think that it's not possible to wait that there will be normalization of these certification. I think that we have to cope with this situation, okay? And I think that the different companies that want to enter the market have to be prepared to work with all the different rules that are in different countries. That at the end they are not so different, okay? Because the nuclear safety is more or less the same everywhere in terms of real content, but we have to cope to different rules and different steps. But it's very important if you want to enter in the market. Okay.
Just two numbers, just to give you an idea of the high potential of the Italian nuclear supply chain within a European environment. More than 50 organizations, 50 companies are members of the European SMR Industrial Alliance. That means the second group after the French group. But the French, they have 57 nuclear power plants. We have 0. And today, 100 Italian companies are providing components, systems, and services to Hinkley Point C for the construction of 2 units of EPR in UK.
Very interesting. And Elena, as an Italian nuclear engineer working in France, I'm sure you have a unique perspective.
Yeah, sure. So I found out only when already working in France. I was involved in a project as a project engineer on field. I found out only at that time, a few years ago, on how many Italian industries were suppliers or sub-suppliers for the French nuclear fleet. Starting from the screws down to the concretes or to the steel alloys, I discovered a universe from my country, which was hidden and involved in French nuclear since decades. And only recently, as my colleagues already said, it's coming to the light. And so more and more in the past 2-3 years, there are occasions to stimulate the collaboration between the two countries.
Thank you. Now we'll talk a little bit more about the supply chain, which is a big issue. And the question I'd like to put to the panel, what impacts to the worldwide geopolitical situation are there on the supply chain? And by worldwide geopolitical situation, I believe that that includes the disruption to oil and gas in the Middle East, but also the US tariffs, which are affecting the supply chain. So would you like to speak to that question on the supply chain? No? Okay.
Nobody
You want me to say something?
supply
I
chain.
have a second part to that
Elena.
question. Go ahead.
I can.
Okay, I think that the nuclear business is a business with a long time. Okay, so we have to look not at the situation that is in the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, but we have to see in longer time. So for sure, there is the actual situation is pushing, okay, in some direction. There are some difficulties, but I think that in the long time to have an European supply chain will be very important, okay? And especially if I look to Italy, especially for the SMR, but not only the SMR, okay? The technology, the new technology, I think one of the challenge that the nuclear power plant have is to reduce the time that is needed for the construction, okay? And to have not reduce the cost, but also to have certainty of the cost, okay? And so for this, the supply chain is crucial, okay? Right. And the local supply chain is important, as is important to have a new technological solution like modularization, and not only for SMR, but also for larger scale power plants. But for sure, to have the possibility to have a supply chain which is more local, more, let me say, more sure in terms of delivery, in terms of cost, is very important. And the European market, from this point of view, is very stable, let me say. Obviously, it's influenced by the geopolitical situation, but at least in terms of stability of the economic system is very important.
Thank you. Elena, what do you think about supply chain issues? Okay, you're muted again, I'm afraid.
Sorry. So from the, let's say, a technical point of view, I think that the main impact of the situation we are living are the limits that this situation impose in the technology transfer and worldwide collaboration, since according to the field of expertise of each company, we may have limits in buying things or sharing information with certain countries, which was not the case in the past. So I feel a little bit of frustration when I cannot get and evolve together with another country or share something on a specific technology, which would benefit both 3, 4 countries at the same time.
Understood.
Well, I don't see, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see a direct impact between Hormuz and the nuclear supply chain or the nuclear sector in general, because I think that this is a plus for the nuclear sector in Europe. That is, I would say, the nuclear sector is 90% European in Europe, because we are managing, we are controlling, I would say, the process of enrichment of the fuel, fabrication of the fuel, design, construction, operation, and dismantling of the nuclear reactors. So the only step that is missing is the natural uranium, But we can solve that from Australia and Canada, that are the first and the third world reserves of natural uranium in the world. If we don't want to rely on Kazakhstan and Russia and Namibia and Niger and whatever. So in principle, the impact of that type of geopolitical issue shouldn't impact directly. But obviously, if the cost of the gasoline, the cost of the electricity is skyrocketing, this is affecting all the industrial sectors. But I would say not specifically nuclear, not directly nuclear, because this is a plus for nuclear, is a good level of independence from the point of view of the Europe.
Very good.
Only one point. I don't know if the level in terms of security, in terms of the quality of what they build, but I think we also to take care on the Chinese capability to realize the nuclear center, because I don't know if the figures are correct, but what we read into the newspaper, seems that the cost for realize a nuclear central in China is important. There is an important difference.
I would say half.
Okay,
50% saving.
Also in
roughly
terms of
speaking.
timing, seems that are more faster compared us. And so again, I have not technical capability for say if could be a risk from them, but also in terms of geopolitical topics, we have to take care of possible risk to have someone that from China will have an idea to build something also here in Europe. So we also take care on this risk.
If I had a comment on that, yes, from the geopolitical point of view, nuclear has to think about, because the Western countries, they were historically the leaders of the technology. Now the center of gravity of nuclear is on the eastern part. Today there are 74 nuclear power plants under construction. 74, and 3/4 of that, they are Chinese and Russian. 37 in China, and the remaining part in Russia. Only 5 in their nation in Russia, but they are building 4 in Turkey, 4 in Egypt, 2 in Bangladesh, 2 in China, 2 in India. So they have the largest international portfolio. And only less than 1/4 is the remaining, the rest of the world. So I think that US, Europe, and also Japan, I would say, they have to think about that. They can lose, in principle, I would say, a position of outstanding capabilities. But the Chinese, the Russians, the Koreans, they are able to provide, to build nuclear power plants on time, on budget, and with a reduced cost, I would say, because they are trained. Because they, in the last 20 years, they build 1 or 2 nuclear reactors per year. While in US, in Europe, in the last 30 years, there were 0. So this is something that if you want to have a good performance of your sector, you have to plan new build in a periodic way all across the decades. And I think that France is doing the right way because they are planning 6 EPR2. That is the right industrial way and political way to support that sector. I don't know, Elena, if you agree on
that. Yes, but I mean, in theory, it's good, but in practice, as we all know, there are approval issues in terms of funding, because the main halting point at the moment is the investment from the French government, following the new expression of needs in terms of amount of money required to build the 6 units. back from 2 years ago. So yeah, basically the blocking point is mainly economic, financial, but obviously in terms of program and technology, let's say they are quite well progressed.
Giovanni.
Yeah, maybe I want to add something in relation to SMRs and AMRs development. If what has been said about China, the potential for China is true, which is, I believe in Europe, in order to really be able to succeed in developing new generation of reactors, it's also important to really work together within the countries. There are many projects today ongoing. There is an alliance, I know, but still any nation is still more or less trying to have its own solution. If you want to go for scalability, there is no other way, given the size of the market, than joint forces, work together and get it done.
Very good. Okay. Move on to a question for many of the people in this room are not in the nuclear business. They're valve companies that have traditionally been in oil and gas or perhaps water. What advice would you give to these companies that want to enter the nuclear market in Europe?
Maybe I think I can start because I'm one of the company. So this is my company perspective. And maybe it's in similar position. There are other companies in Italy nowadays. However, my advice is we started approaching nuclear because we started looking. We're monitoring the trend, so we see that there is a trend, a positive trend. We have the capabilities, we have the mechanical capabilities. We are mostly still in the oil and gas sector, but we were in power. We were already providing components to Ansaldo. And then it's clear that if we start getting demands, and they're coming because there are technological demands from the startups for components, which we provide, then you have to prepare for it. To prepare for it, in our case, we started by just training. People started really consolidating a mindset around nuclear. It's not the same to work in the oil and gas industry. It's still a very regulated industry, but nuclear is different. And we started with that. The second step would be certification. So we are in this stage nowadays. We started working for certification. It's not a short-term approach. It has to be long-term, so it has to clearly have a strategic approach. You don't start today, try and see, and then you stop. You have to be clear. You go there, but you have to be ready, and you have to prepare yourself. Then when it comes to the product itself, I wouldn't say it can be, so components are still the same, but the demand for quality is much higher. The demand for tracing the components is very, very high. So this is the advice I can give from my own experience.
Interesting. Marcelo?
Yes, as I told before, the certification it's very important, and I don't think that is only a cost, the certification. It's not only time consuming, but certification also add values to the company. I mean that I've seen in these last years of experience. I work on the ITER project, okay, for the fusion. The ITER project is in Cadarache in France. And I work with many companies, also Italian companies, working in this project that didn't have any experience in the nuclear business, okay? And in the time lapse of 6 years working in this project, they gained the experience, they gained the certification, and they changed the company, okay? They really, now they are working on a higher level, not only in the nuclear business, but also in their conventional business. Okay, so this makes the difference for a company. So don't think that the certification is only a cost. It's only that something that is a barrier to enter in the nuclear business, but it's also very important for the growing of the company in terms of capability, in terms of knowledge, and in terms of quality, for sure. Because the rule that you learn in the nuclear business, then you can apply also in other business. Okay.
Giuseppe, did you have a thought on that?
Honestly, nothing more to add compared to what was already said. So the certification is one of the important points. The skill of the people, for sure, is another one, in particular, because we have to rebuild something that we destroyed in the last year. But what is important is to put in the condition the company to do something, because now we are talking a lot, but no opportunity to really go to the field. So we hope that more or less sooner will be the condition in order to start to work on it. That's the point. Because at the end of the story, as mentioned, if you don't have training, it's also complicated to move in a new arena. So really, we hope that more or less sooner is possible to start to do something.
Excellent.
Following for sure some rule.
I see 3 simple steps, simple in quote, for a company that is not already in the nuclear sector to enter. First, they have to see a market. That means they have to see in the long run really the possibility of a market, and this is an information, a signal that should come from outside. The second, as you mentioned, the certification, and the third is to enter the nuclear world, you need to change your mind, because safety culture is the key item. So safety as the priority, first, second, and third step. So economic issues, industrial issues are at the lower level, but on top there is that safety cultural approach. That is a lot of things, not only procedures, not only papers, but is an attitude of the people that are working in the company, that are interacting with other companies that are working in the nuclear environment. So I think that this is the most important step and change of mind to be performed.
Thank you. Elena?
Yes, sure.
How does
So
somebody get into the nuclear business?
So just to use the word that Marco used earlier, nuclearization, I would say that the newcomers in the nuclear market shall have like a very open-minded approach that from a non-technical point of view can be, for me, summarized in 3 principles. The first is flexibility. So basically in other industries, you are, I think, more used to start from a point A, go straight more or less to a point B. In nuclear, this happens, yes, but in terms of space, time, and change of requirements, you never know what happens. So we have to be flexible, we have to be quite adaptable, because things change. And on top of that, the healthiest approach is to be patient, because the nuclear market is a slow market.
That's good advice. Thank you. So, time flies when you're listening to 5 nuclear experts discuss the market. I want to thank the panel, but before we go, if there's another comment any of you want to make that's perhaps left unsaid and you want to make a final comment, please do so.
No particular new address. Let me say, really, I'm happy where we start to discuss also in Bergamo about these topics, and this is absolutely a initial, but is an important starting. And so we hope that also, thanks to this event, we help the company to move in this interesting industry, for sure, taking into consideration what all we said during this interesting panel. But anyhow, it's important to understand if there are capability, and if we identify that the capability there are, to work together in order to reach, to be part of this new journey that at the end of the story, in a certain way, we will start, I hope, really sooner.
Okay.
Okay, since I don't want to give up my promotional role in here for Anima, I just want to recall the opportunity for the Italian companies to be present at the bilateral event in Rome and Milano. In Milano will be the 12th of October 2026, and on the following day, it will be in Rome. Thanks
Grazie.
for participating.
Anyone else?
Just one final comment from my side. Several planets and stars has to be aligned in order to to open that option, especially in Italy. But if we'll be able to do that, and several stakeholders should play in the right way, should play their role in that, I think that the opportunity for the Italian companies here is really high, and also the benefit for that. Let us see to Spain. Several times some people say, okay, but in Spain the electricity price is very low because they have a lot of renewables. Yes, but they have also 20% of base load nuclear. And if you see the planning of the last planning for the Italian development on the energy sector that the ministry did 2 years ago, they are targeting in 2050 to have 10 to 20% of nuclear as a base load in Italy, and that will make a difference also to reduce the burden of the cost of gas, making the price for several hours in a day for the electricity.
Thank you. Elena, thank you for joining us from France. Anything else?
Me, but just don't be shy and join the nuclear community.
Okay, thank you very much. Join me in thanking this panel. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and Elena.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to, thank you all, invite up to the stage our panel on flow control technologies in nuclear energy. And I have to give you a warning. If you heard me struggle over the Italian names, you're going to really hear me struggle over the French names. Alan Rochery of Bernard Controls, welcome, Alan. Jérôme Champavert, Jerome, and Laurent Peppercorn. Let me give a brief introduction, and then each of them will have a presentation about flow control technologies in nuclear. Alan Rochery is Vice President, Nuclear Business Development at Bernard Controls, where he leads international strategy and business for electric actuation solutions in nuclear projects worldwide. Bernard Controls is a global leader in electric valve actuators with over 80 years of expertise serving oil and gas, nuclear, and other process industries. Jerome is Global Director for Energies of the Montero Group. After 15 years managing contracts, maintenance services, and development for nuclear and cryogenic valve applications, Jerome is today Commercial Director for Montero, part of Group M, which is a French industrial integrator and OEM specialized in piping, boiler making, mechanics, engineering, and control for complex facilities. Laurent is Executive Vice President, Global Sales, Valve. He has worked in the valve industry for 30 years and has extensive experience in energy industries, both oil and gas and nuclear. Valve leverages advanced engineering capabilities and commitment to innovation to create hard-working valves that meet critical industrial needs in the areas of power generation, chemical, petrochemical, oil and gas, pulp and paper, mining, cryogenic, and shipbuilding industries. So now I'd like to give the floor to each of them and have opening remarks, and I believe you gentlemen have slides, correct? Okay, you don't have slides. So, Laurent, I'm sorry, that's tomorrow's panel has slides. Laurent, tell us a little bit more about you and your company and your participation in the nuclear industry.
So you've already introduced myself. So Valan is not a very new company. It's been in the business for about 75 years. Actually, last year was the 75th anniversary. In a number of industries, you mentioned oil and gas, it's petrochemical, refining, mining, and nuclear. And nuclear since the very beginning. So Valan is a Canadian company. The headquarters is in Montreal, Quebec, but we have 11 plants in 9 different countries, including in Italy. In Italy, it's only on the oil and gas offshore side, but we have been acting in the nuclear, including for Navy nuclear, since the beginning of the Canadian nuclear program in the 50s and 60s. So all along the big initial cycle of nuclear in Canada and worldwide, we've been supplying valves for basically every single technology in France, in China, in Canada, in Korea. So we have our products installed in most of the nuclear plants globally, in 95% of the nuclear power plants in North America, and of course all the CANDOs that were mentioned earlier on, which is the Canadian technology for nuclear. Unlike many different companies, we remained in nuclear despite the time where it went out of fashion. So what was mentioned in the previous panel is that over the last 15, 20 years, nuclear really went out of fashion. Some countries left. We mentioned Italy, Germany, Belgium was about to decommission all of its nuclear plants. And subsequently, a lot of suppliers left nuclear. We did not, and we're happy we did not because it takes a long time to train a nuclear engineer. We had Elena before on the call. It takes a long time, and we lost a generation. So we're very happy that Valan maintained its R&D, its production, its qualifications to stay in that business for so many years.
Jérôme?
Yes. So from Montero side, Montero is a typical nuclear baby French company. It has been created at the end of 90s by Eric Montero as welder for a nuclear power plant close to this headquarter. And year after years, they grew up, and today Montero is considered as a specialist for welding application and for piping, boiler making, and all activities around mechanical expertise for the nuclear side. And after the maintenance, the company has developed other competencies in project management, for example, and we have talked about new builds. So Montero is supplying kilometer of pipes for new program. So, for example, for IPERA 2, and so on, and for the dismantling of the older reactors and other logistic activities too. So my past was more especially in the valve industry, inside Valan, actually, in France. But today, Montero is more seen as an integrator of mechanical equipments, and so valve and pump and actuators and so on. So we see the difference with the need to supply good equipment in quality, in terms of delay and so on. So I change the side in this industry, and it's a good point of view too.
Thank you. Alan?
Thank you, Jérôme. Good afternoon, everyone. So it's a pleasure to be here today and be part of this panel. Bernard Controls, so we are supplier, so designer, manufacturer, supplier of electric actuators for different kind of industries, everywhere where you can find pipes, valves. So it can be oil and gas, water, conventional power, and nuclear. We are celebrating this year 90 years. And regarding nuclear, we are involved in nuclear industry for 60 years already, since the start of the French program in the 70s. So as said Laurent, I believe it is due to expectation of nuclear industry, we have been continuously involved in nuclear industry since that time. And it's very important because whereas new build timeline is about 10 to 20 years to build a nuclear power plant, but you have to be there also during the operation of the plant. That should be about 60 and even could be 80 years. So it's very key to be aligned on a long-term involvement in nuclear industry. Regarding entering the nuclear, I believe this is a topic today. So what I wanted to say is that entering nuclear is entering in an ecosystem with a very high expectation. We already heard about it during the previous panel. It's about safety culture. So I spoke about long-term involvement, quality insurance too. So it's very demanding, really, but because it's very demanding, it is also a source of opportunity. And what I believe in Europe, and particularly in Italy, as you say, we have about 100 companies supplying components for HPC. Some of them are supplying components for valves already. And I believe the European company and Italian company should be in the future should have a key role in the development of the supply chain in nuclear, because all the expertise is here. We have the manufacturing facility capability, engineering. So there is no reason that European company and Italian company don't take part of this future. Today, what is very special for a few years, we have a dual dynamic. We have both the large reactor that are coming back into focus with many projects all across the world and particularly in Europe. Still, this project rely on qualified product, qualified suppliers. So it's quite restrictive, not easy to access. But there is always room for new entrants because of new requirement. Elena, in the previous panel, mentioned the importance to be very patient because of many changes in the project, so it's a source of opportunity too. And the other field of opportunities are, of course, the SMR, because the page is almost blank today. So there are a lot of room for innovation and for new entrants too, I believe.
Thank you. I'm going to come over here for our discussion. Thank you all. Following up on what Alan said about, he started to answer the question about why nuclear is different. What difference do you see between the various different types of nuclear opportunities, SMRs, new builds, and where do you think the greatest opportunity is for suppliers like your companies?
So the opportunity is big on all three, but they're very different. You have three steps. One is refurbishments. We've had plants since the 60s, 70s. They're coming to their end of life. So we've moved from a position of let's decommission most of them to let's give them a 30 years extension. So that's a first portion. The main characteristics there is if you're a utility and you operate a nuclear power plant and you refurbish, you're going to replace like for like. You're not going to start changing suppliers to replace your valves, your pipes, whatever, even your actuators. They're going to try to use the same as they've had. So that's a big opportunity and you need to deliver. The second one will be the large nuclear plant, the ones we mentioned Cernavoda before. So typically in Cernavoda, back to the refurbish, if you're Atkins or you're Ansaldo Nuclear, you're not going to go and find qualify a new supplier. You're going to use whoever was installed, if they still exist, which might not be the case, and you're going to replace like for like. The new build, then you're going to first have to select a technology. Is it going to be a CANDU? Is it going to be an AP1000? Is it going to be an EPR? Then you're going to go through the qualified supply chain that goes along with it. The SMR and AMR is a slightly different one. Now we're looking at new technologies, too many technologies actually, because you're looking at over 70 designs in theory on paper today. Let's be honest, in 5 to 10 years, we'll be left with 5, maybe 3, certainly not 70 and certainly not 50. So that's technology which is based on existing nuclear. Some of them is a reduced version of a full power plant. Some are a completely new design with new applications. So that will require some level of an R&D and level of knowledge of nuclear before it can go into that. On the other hand, they also try to leverage cost saving by having multiple units, and that was also mentioned in the previous panel. So the series is important. And by doing a series, you want to make savings, but they still want to save money. And there's also a large portion of those products which will be non-nuclear. So it's a combination of how can we remain very firm on the quality of nuclear for the core element, everything around the containment. How can we have a lighter version of that for what's outside the containment area and the balance of plant, and having a hybrid model which is maybe more accessible to others. So it's really 3 different approaches: refurb, which is, let's replace what we have and make sure it continues for 30 years. New build, which is a very large program, but it's going to take 10 to 15 years for a new plant. And the SMRs and AMRs, where it's a little bit of a startup idea. Let's make it new, but you still have to maintain some nuclear constraints.
Yes, I will complete for SMR, AMR, and new builds. Our company, more and more oftenly, called by the big engineering for taking part on the basic design. So it's very interesting because on the previous nuclear power plant and the previous program, this role of manufacturer was not so important, and engineering like EDF, Framatome, NG, Tractable, and so on start again to discuss with us to take into account standardization, to take into account maintainability, operability, and to limit costs during operating the nuclear power plant. And in the past, it was 2 different worlds. You had the construction and then the operation. And people between these 2 steps not used to talk between them. So today, Montero, for example, is taking part in Exana SMR program, and at this stage of this project, we can just give some consent and advice for constructability and for the best regulation applicable, and so on and so on. So this point is very important in the future because we are not just manufacturer and execution parts, but we can give high value counsel to the end user.
Thank you, Jérôme. So I will give my perspective from a component manufacturer, even it will be a little bit similar to what said Laurent. So for refurbishment, what is most of the time the end user rely on already qualified solution, certified supplier and qualified solution. Most of the time it's very hard for the end user to change. So the idea is to replicate what was already on site. So the main challenge is to address obsolescence, for instance, and to make sure there is a solution that will not impact the rest of the installation, to do not requalify it, and to I would say to be reliable in terms of lead time, because what is very important for refurbishment is to make sure that the asset will be available and to do not get some outages that last more than forecast. For a new build, it's a bit different. Most of the time, there are some new requirements in new build. Depends the region. For instance, in Asia, it's sure that in China particularly, they are able to maintain a design across different projects. But in Europe,
Most of the project, all of them are first of a kind. So between each project, you have some changes. So you have to be flexible and to address these changes on a manufacturer of component perspective, to make sure you comply strictly to the qualification requirement, which are never the same. And for SMR, AMR, so there are many design, many developers, but and many things to create, because most of them are still in feasibility stage. So except few design which rely on already existing design on a larger scale, most of them are very new technologies. And I would say that it's more a market for R&D. Many projects, the technology does not exist today. So there is a big opportunity for companies for developing new solutions.
Okay, I have a follow-up for Jerome. Jerome, in your statement, were you saying that the operators are getting more involved than in the past? Is that a correct summary? And also, what is the operator, how is their perspective different than when you work with an EPC? So what are the dynamics there?
We used to say that the supplies of equipment is only representing 20% of total costs of operation. So for end user, more you anticipate difficulties about maintenance, about spare parts management, about special tools, about manpower, etc., and more you reduce the cost of the 80% during operation. So in the past, the engineering was very different between the construction and the operation. It was different teams, and sometimes for French program, you had many people in France and some people in Germany, and both of them doesn't talk together, so it was a little bit tricky. So today we see more collaboration between engineering, between manufacturing companies, between equipment suppliers, and so on. So for me, it's a very important point in the future if we want to succeed to build new nuclear power plant in less time and with less money, because as mentioned Elena before, the main point today for developing this technology in the future is the financement. So if we succeed to be more efficient between us, between manufacturer, equipment supplier, engineering, and so on, it will be good for stakeholders and for politics to decide to invest more and more in this technology.
Thank you.
Just to add on that is, and we're seeing new models as well. We're talking about SMR, and I said a lot of them are just on papers and R&D projects. One of them is actually under construction. It's the BWRX 300 by GE Hitachi, and that's an interesting model because it is actually it's not even a joint venture, it's a consortium between GE Hitachi, who's the main engineering, Atkins Realis for the nuclear engineering, Aecon, who's a construction company, civil engineering, and OPG, who's the end user, the utility. And they're actually working all together on an open book policy. It's a completely new model. So they have really, for any decision, they have a committee that's going to sit together with all four, and they're trying to bring some of their key suppliers, including Valve, in that discussion. So it's a very different approach from let's have a tender and see who's going to win, and then you're going to move from one to B and B to C, and then one is the EPC and then doesn't care, one is the operator and then is going to have to work on the maintenance. So on those programs, which are very expensive because money is an issue and very long, we're seeing a shift in some of the approach from, let's have everyone from themselves to, well, maybe we should collaborate. First of all, because we don't have enough resources globally to address those projects. I think that's going to be one of the questions today, but the supply chain, the resources are limited, and there are more projects than can actually be delivered today in the industry. So unless we change the model and we change the way we approach it, we won't be able to do as much as we'd like to as an industry.
In Bernard Controls, what we believe, I agree with Jérôme, the product only by its own is not everything. And what we believe is to provide more solutions than a product. And in the solution, you have the product for sure. But inside, you have all what about maintenance. So for instance, we strongly believe that it's key for the future, for the economic aspect of the nuclear power plant, to have easier maintenance. Also to switch from periodic maintenance to predictive maintenance. So we are developing some solution to make sure that the user will do the maintenance only when it is needed. So it's also a big source of some opportunities also to develop some solution for product suppliers. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on. Now I want to talk about the equipment itself. So given the very large number of reactor technologies existing and under development, how can you ensure consistency and service life over the decades in the design and manufacture of the equipment? And what trends are you seeing right now in valves for the nuclear industry? Alan?
Okay, from an actuator perspective, it is true that when you switch from, I would say, a single end customer like EDF in France, and then when you address different markets, in China, in Europe, anywhere in the world, in North America, you face two very different expectations technically that makes the standardization very difficult. But still, you have to support the projects during decades. So it's true, it's a real challenge. However, there are some common expectation regarding the quality programs, for instance, the skills. So you have to find the right balance between, I would say, very specific solutions that address the need of each customer, and also what can be standardized, because you need to scale. You need to scale your production, you need to scale your skills. So it's true, it's a real challenge. And I believe nuclear industry compares to oil and gas, for instance, lead to more differentiation in terms of technical baseline. It's a real challenge. Also regarding, for instance, the norms between the French ones, the American ones, that are not always compatible. There is a wishful thinking to have a common norms to be able to do the same things for all customers. Honestly, the trend is not in that direction, I believe. So it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity to be creative and to address this different expectation.
I agree with what Alan just said. There are only 6 nuclear technologies globally in terms of new plant, and we've supplied 5 of them. There are a lot of commonalities, but there's certainly no standardization, and I don't think that's going to change. You mentioned the French one, and France has its own industry, and it's very well developed, and it's going to keep on going for decades to come, so there's no need for them to change, actually. In general, this is a very conservative industry, so if it's not broken, don't fix it. So we're going to keep working with what we have. This is changing now with the SMRs, as I mentioned before, but it is a long game. It is a long game. You need to be here for decades to come. People need to be comfortable that you'll be still doing the same or similar in the next 20, 30 years to make sure that life extension will be possible. So we're getting some movement of standardization, but certainly not a very big one because it's still very far away. But it's the same constraint. It's quality, it's safety, it's making sure you have spare parts for 50 years. So there are a lot of common themes, but it's still very different country by country.
Yes, it's difficult to standardize, but it's unfortunately the only way to simplify and to keep our organization fit and smart. So if we just want to move on this topic, the only advice I can give it to you is to participate to the workshop with your customer, your end user. In the previous panel, we just mentioned at the end you have to find your market. In order to find your market, if you don't meet your end user, your customer, and if you don't ask them what are your requirements, what are your needs, and why don't you use my product as it, without any change, without any extra options, and so on, you cannot move on this topic. The second point is to participate to the kind of association, industrial association in France. Several years ago, the GIFEN has been created. Today, it's more than 500 companies with engineering, manufacturer, supplier, raw material supplier, and so on. So it's very important to take part to this ecosystem, because it's in this agency, in this association, you can discuss about your problem. You can discuss about the lack of competence, of problematic about your contractual requirements of your end user, and so on. So it's very important. And the last point, it's the regulation and applicable code for the construction of the nuclear power plant. If you don't take part in this workshop, others will write the future. Okay, and it's very, very, very real. In United States, with ASME code, if you are not present in this organization, you will have to apply standards you don't you don't metrize, you don't master. So this point is very, very important, and I don't know if here in Italy if it's a common practice to go and take part in this regulation authority.
Okay. Let me ask you this. What, in your businesses, what are the supply chain challenges and what are the personnel challenges in meeting the needs of the nuclear industry? We'll begin with Lauren.
So in terms of supply chain, it's a general issue that given the new mega cycle of nuclear that's starting, there will be a shortage of supply chain capacity and capabilities. And that was mentioned before, and part of the capabilities issue is linked to the lack of skilled personnel. Because, as I said before, nuclear went off fashion for 20 years. Young people stopped studying nuclear engineering. So we're struggling to find QA/QC people. We're struggling to find R&D engineers. We're struggling to find welders. So it goes from trade to PhDs. So there's a global lack of support there. What we're doing to help with it is we're participating with universities on new programs. And again, one of them was mentioned before in the university in Italy. But that's crucial because these people are not trained in 6 months or 1 year. The second one is from the supply chain. I mean, we're a valve manufacturer, so we buy steel. We need forgings, we need castings, we need qualified suppliers, we need to make sure they adhere to the same quality programs, and we need to make sure they're going to be here in the long term. So there's the whole supply chain that has to work together, and there's a lot of support from the industry, actually. Unlike other industries, the end user are extremely helpful and supportive because they know they have a 20, 30, 40 years program to implement, and they need to have a strong, solid supply chain that's going to be here in 10 years or in 15 years. So, but there are a lot of challenges in terms of capacity and capabilities.
You do more due diligence on vendors and suppliers in this industry than other industries.
Yes. Yeah, it's more stringent, and as we normally say, you know, we work a lot in oil and gas as well. In oil and gas, like many industries, we mostly sell steel. In nuclear, we sell paper. We produce more paper than we produce valves. And it takes time, it takes people to actually produce that paper, read it, sign it, countersign it, and countersign it. So,
Alan?
Yes, thank you. Regarding the challenges for the supply chain, so I see a few of them. First one is about safety culture. So safety culture, you need to develop the safety culture. Entering in nuclear, you need to develop the safety culture in your company at all the positions, production, design, quality, even the sales also, everywhere. But what is more difficult is to develop this safety culture across your supply chain, I mean across sub-suppliers. When you are a tier 2 like us, you need to deploy it across tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, because in nuclear industry, for a safety-related component, you need to demonstrate the safety in an exhaustive manner. Each part is involved in safety. So it's very demanding. You need to get the commitment from your suppliers and the supplier of your suppliers about the traceability, about to trace the change. Any change you have in material, in process, in suppliers, you need to make sure that you maintain the qualification of the product. You need to do it, you must do it, I would say, for a very long term. When you qualify your product at the construction of the plant, you need to keep it, to maintain this traceability and to trace the changes along the operation of the plant. So it's 60, 80 years. So it's the first challenge, is about safety culture. Then from our perspective, about a product that has to be qualified for normal and accidental condition, you need to be prepared for a very costly and time-consuming process about qualification. I don't speak about certification like ISO 19443. I speak about qualification of the product. So you need to demonstrate in a very deep manner that your product, even after 30 years or 40 years of use, will be able to operate the valve, for instance, in our case, during any hazardous, any accident. Can be seism, can be a loss of coolant accident in a nuclear power plant. So it's very time-consuming, very costly. It's mandatory for sure, and you need to keep this qualification over the operation of the plant. So it's something very special in nuclear. Then we spoke already about it. It's about different expectations, so the fragmentation of the expectation from the customer, and also depending the countries. There could be, for instance, honestly, in France, we have many changes. We don't have many projects, but we have many changes. In China, they have more projects than changes. So it means you have a change every maybe 6-10 reactor units, but at least you can rely on a very, I would say, frozen design during 5-6 years and 10 reactor units, so it's quite efficient. In some other areas, it's not the case because the projects are very long to be executed, so changes are coming, and you need to be prepared for it because the change management is quite heavy. and can be source of business too, honestly. So just need to be addressed, that's all. And the last one is about skills. I think Laurent spoke about it already. On our side, for instance, we don't face any manufacturing capability constraints, honestly. But on some other areas like qualification engineers, particularly, it's very hard to find the right skills in sufficient quantities. And it is a case for many years. So it's an area of concern in our case, and could be for any manufacturer of, I would say, actuators, but also could be sensors, anything that has to be qualified, the product. Yeah.
Jerome?
Yes, we mentioned human resources, we mentioned innovation, we mentioned time and cost-consuming business. The cost of the certification, qualification for one equipment, we used to say that it's around €1 million and 12 to 18 months. So it's very costly. So my point is, if we want to strengthen this supply chain in the future, my first concern is the financing of the organization, and how can we help supplier, sub-supplier to find money to support this long-term industry. We start to see a dedicated fund for nuclear business and nuclear application. In France, you have the France 2030 program, which finance SMR, AMR program, for example, project. So it's very interesting, and you have to be open-minded and to ask for this money, because as Alan mentioned, it's hard to support this investment because you will pick the fruit not only before 2 or 3 years in the future after this first investment. And the second point for me is the knowledge and the data management. If you want to be sure to succeed in this industry, Alan mentioned that it's quite difficult to find good people with a good knowledge. So you have to think about how to build your system, your process, and so on, to be sure that you can keep the high value of these guys during years and years. So there is no magical solution, but it's mainly a lot of method and a lot of work to be sure that you will keep this knowledge in your organization during years and years.
Okay, very good. Laurent said something interesting. He said that for oil and gas you produce steel, and for nuclear you produce paper, which is a good illustration. I'll tell a little story if I may. In 2010, I was working in the offshore industry, Gulf of Mexico. And that's when we had Macondo, which was the BP blowout that caused the massive oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. And after that happened, the government brought in the Nuclear Regulatory Agency to rewrite the specs for subsea equipment for the Gulf of Mexico as the model for safety and procedure and so forth. So that's illustrative of your point. But I like steel versus paper. That's very interesting. So we've got about 5 minutes left, and I'd like to open it up to any questions from the audience. Does anyone have any questions? There's one question. make sure everybody hears.
Hello, I'm Simone Albanese from Valve Italia. I'm also a nuclear engineer. Just a side note, it's not really a question. It's nuclear is always presented in this kind of event as electricity generation, but it's not only that. It's also non-power application. So just a small advice for my colleagues in the valve sector: if you cannot approach the nuclear sector from the energy generation side, there are other non-power applications, such as research reactor, or medicine, or agriculture, or food sterilization. We have to remember that also, not only electricity and heat. So just an advice, and if your company, I'm sure they are working also in these sectors, if you can expand maybe on that, on the opportunities, would be nice to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're absolutely right, and actually, even though a lot of those side applications are very much linked to electricity or heat generation, one example is the Navy. For instance, we do supply on aircraft carriers, which are nuclear powered, or submarines. We mentioned before the ITER project in Cadarache, a very important one on fusion. Lots of valves, very complex ones. Isotopes is another one. You mentioned medical. What I would say is usually those, like Navy nuclear or research reactors or fusion, are the same but worse in terms of specs. So you'd better be very well versed into the nuclear industry or applications before you actually move into those, whether it's molten salts, because they're just one step further. But they are interesting, and you're right. There's a number of applications to be worked on in that sector.
Yeah, thank you for the remark. From our perspective, if we focus on the electricity generation or heat generation, it's because I would say that in our turnover in nuclear, I would say that electricity and heat generation, and mainly electricity, should be about 95%, I would say, of the turnover. That's why, maybe, but you're right. As far as we are concerned, we have some application as Laurent in the Navy. It's also a very demanding market. I would say that why I did not mention it is because even if it's coming back now, because we have a new program in France and many countries also, because of the geopolitical context, are in the same situation. But still, I joined the company 20 years ago. I was aware that 5 or 10 years before I joined, there were some deliveries for big programs of nuclear-propelled submarine and aircraft carrier. But then, during 20 years, we sold nothing. So it's a very special market with a very specific product. The product we made for some of the application, we made it only for this installation. And in France, we have only one nuclear-propelled aircraft carrier, only one. So we delivered it in 2000, something like that. No spare at all during 20 years. So it's very specific, You cannot build a business plan. As far as we are concerned, it's not the case for other kind of components, but regarding electric actuators, you cannot build a business plan thanks to your Navy. It's not possible. Then it's good to do because there are a lot of innovation. And for instance, when I see some SMR coming, I can see some requirement, and we can use some bricks, some principle of what we did for the Navy. So it's good. There are some synergies, I would say. So I don't want to mean that it's a market we should avoid. No, not at all. It's very interesting and for sure very useful. But you cannot feed your factory and pay the salaries of your all your payroll with that market. And a research reactor, yes, sure, but there are not so many. Usually the safety requirements are less because the power is less, so safety circuits are less demanding. So as far as we are concerned, the potential, the business potential is quite less. It's interesting, but it's quite less. Yeah.
Jerome.
Yes, it's a very interesting remark. Civil nuclear is very sexy for a company like us, because it's the only market where you can hope to sign 8 years contract without optional years. It's firm. So when you succeed to enter in this market, you have the long-term approach, and you have a lot of visibility for your business. But as mentioned and as explained, Alan, it's risky because it's very cyclic, and you see after a big accident like Fukushima and so on, the business and the market can completely crash and shut down. So it's a very risky business. And the second point is the safety culture that we mentioned is very hard to learn by the team, by people, because it's not very easy to understand for each step of the process, in engineering, in the supply chain, in the manufacturing step, in the assembling on site, in the testing, in the operating and maintenance, and so on. So if you just fail one time, you will pay for years. Like that, it's not so sexy. So I just invite to diversify your business, and the other market you mentioned are very complementary. Defense, research, and big science, chemical process, and so on. It will use the same knowledge, the same technical bricks. So don't hesitate to diversify.
Okay, we have time perhaps for one more quick question. I don't see one. So I'll give each of the panelists just wrap up final remarks on flow control in this industry.
So I'll make two comments. One of them, it's a really interesting industry, but it's a very long game, as I mentioned before, so you'd better have something else on the side as well. It is cyclical, so you might be waiting for 5 or 8 years for the new plant to start building. So it's good if you have something else to leave on the side. But it's rewarding because it's going to be for 1 or 2 generations afterwards. So it's very few industries where you have a plant that takes you 20, 25, 30 years ahead. Second point, I'll just say again what Jérôme said. Be part of the committees. If you want to be part of that business, it's important that you can influence the specs, you can influence the norm, because you'll have to follow them, and when it's done, it's written. So like you do for API or ISO or whatever norm, be part of the committees, be part of the industry, and weigh in.
As a conclusion, I'm very happy to be here in Italy, because as mentioned before, Italy was not considered as a nuclear country, but in the future I'm sure that it will be. So my point is, let's work the collaboration between our country at the European side, just not before French and Italian company, but at the European side, because against us we will have Chinese company, we will have US company, and if we don't do this job between us in Europe, we will not exist on this market until a few years.
And Canada. Yeah. Alan?
Yes, I'm quite aligned with Laurent and Jérôme, and what I could add is, because we talk a lot about what to learn about nuclear and so on, but maybe nuclear has to learn also from oil and gas. So that's why I would say that oil and gas oriented companies like in Italy, regarding the valves, are quite welcome, I would say, to join the community nuclear, because maybe we can improve also the way we are we are executing projects and the way we are collaborating. So anyway, I'm very keen always to extend the collaboration. So welcome, and don't hesitate to contact us personally, individually, after this panel. And thank you very much, John, for your moderation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan, Jerome, Laurent. Let's give them a round of applause for their fine presentation.